Welcome, lovely ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me here on the Freemelon podcast. The associated YouTube channel is the Freemelon Society on YouTube, so check that out if you want an idea of the type of subject material that I'm going to be covering here on the Freemelon podcast. Now, this is episode 1, and in many of the videos and lectures I've done on the Freemelon Society, I may have touched here or there on some elements of my background, where I'm coming from, and I think what would be good for this very first episode of the Freemelon podcast would just be to go back and give you a comprehensive understanding of who I am. Why on earth would you want to listen to me? Okay, what do I have to offer? Where am I coming from? What's my background? So I'm just going to start from the beginning, tell you where I'm coming from. That way you guys can understand who it is you're listening to, okay? My name's Eli Martyr. I'm just an average guy, average dude, growing up, born and raised in Toronto, Ontario. I come from a very, very loving family. I'm not coming from any adversity. I wish I had some sort of sob story to tell you. I was born and raised on the street. I don't. I have a very, very good and healthy upbringing. Parents were very loving. I had wonderful friends, wonderful school experience. I loved elementary school. I loved high school. I didn't want it to end. I know a lot of people, sometimes they say, oh, I hated high school. I didn't understand that. I loved high school. Anyway, so I was always an active kid. I was always very interested in physical activity and health. From a very early age, I jumped into gymnastics. So I started doing gymnastics when I was maybe around 12 or so, 12 or 13. And I carried that with me throughout my entire life. I was doing it all through high school and also through university later on. Also, I developed a fascination with martial arts. I read a lot of comic books when I was a kid, and watched action movies, and really loved the action genre, loved to identify with heroes, and I gained that respect for physicality and being able to have command over your physical body. So I decided, I want to do the same type of thing. I loved Spider-Man comic books, loved all the superheroes, and just kind of really dug the heroic type of thing. So as I was doing gymnastics, did martial arts, Taekwondo and karate and Muay Thai, and I did grappling later on, some military self-defense, just getting my feet wet in kind of everything. By the end of high school, I was making very good progress with my athletics, decided that I wanted to study further, so I went to university and took kinesiology and health sciences and graduated from kinesiology. Oh, and yes, I guess I should mention, after high school, once I got into university, as I was starting to make some good headway with my athletics, my gymnastics and martial arts and whatnot, I realized that, I really like this. I'd love to be able to do this as a career of some sort once I'm done with university. And I was always a fan of the performing arts, always loved drama and acting. So during university, I got an agent and started to get the odd job here or there in film. And then when I was done with university, once I graduated, then I decided that I was going to go for it. I decided to go and try and make a career in the film industry. And that's what I did. And I became a stuntman, started working with lots of great people, other acrobats and performers and martial artists and whatnot. And ended up with a really great career in film. It was during my time in university, that there was a shift. So it was around this time where I started my journey into knowledge, right? Into reading, into discovering the world around me. And the spark that set that off was one particular day where someone had made some sort of reference to a historical event. And the reference, it was personally stultifying. I realized that I didn't know. And it seemed like, now I can't remember exactly what the reference was, but all I remember is being transfixed in shame because I didn't know at all what the person was talking about. And that really bothered me. For some reason, that particular episode, it just really bothered me. And it was at that time, during that moment, where really I came to grips with the reality. And the reality is that I was stupid. I just didn't know anything that really mattered in life, that really, truly mattered in life. And I made that personal covenant that I was going to change that. There was no longer. I was tired of not knowing. And that's when I started hitting the books hard. Started buying up any and every sort of material that I could on just about everything. I started with history because that was the first insult. So that's the first area that I sought to correct. So I started looking into history, alternative history, the history that the school books don't really talk to you about. And whenever I would find a really good, reputable source of information, I would just raid the bibliography and then I would look at their sources and I would just buy all the books in the bibliography. And eventually, as I learned more and more, I got to the realization that everything that I was learning in school was really just an exercise in pneumatic subject matter. I didn't really learn anything of critical importance in school. Everything that I learned had to come from my own personal effort after schooling was done. And so, like I said before, I started with history. And once you study enough history, you irrevocably come across information that shows you what has been occulted or occluded from conventional history. And then you start to discover and learn about the way the world works. This is also something I wanted to know. I wanted to know what is this world I live in? How do things work? How does the economy work? All that kind of stuff. And then when you start getting into how the world works, you start to come across very upsetting, very troubling, very disturbing information about the groups that run the world, about their origins, the religions that they believe in, what they have done to subvert and exact their control over the populations in the past, in the distant past, in the distant past, and in the extremely distant ancient past almost. And of course, one thing leads to another. Everything is interconnected. Once you start getting into what has not been told to you in history, you start to learn more about what has not been told to you in terms of health and the understanding of physicality and the laws that govern health and wellness and vitality. One of the first books I read on alternative health was Kevin Trudeau's Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About. And that book, as much as there's loads of stuff in the book that I would not necessarily recommend now, knowing what I do now, but it was definitely a wake-up call. Because growing up, my diet was not good. My diet was extremely bad growing up. Extremely bad. And as much as I didn't suffer from the more debilitating types of health conditions that are potentially out there, I had chronic mucus, I had allergies, I had seasonal, flu susceptibility, lots of this kind of stuff. With me, the chronic mucus was something that I just thought I'm going to have to live with. Dry skin was something that I was battling with for my whole life up until that time. And again, because I didn't understand the laws that govern health, I could not recognize that the things that I was doing and the nonsense that I was putting in my body had anything to do with it. I just couldn't recognize that for what it was. And so, yeah, that book helped to start identify some of those violations of the laws of health. It was around that time where I decided that I would go plant-based and I would eliminate meat from the diet. Not right after that particular book, but I had gone through a couple other books, looked at other material, and then the decision was very easy. Giving up meat in the diet was something that made very good sense. As much as I didn't have it all put together, not even close, and not even now. I mean, we're always students in life, but as much as I didn't have it all put together, at least I could be certain that giving up meat and dairy was something that was self-evident at this point. So I did. And I gave that up, and I gave it up for primarily the health reasons. I wanted better health. And in order to do that, you could not be loading yourself with dead, rotting carcasses and turn your stomach into a graveyard. That much was just at least self-evident. After making the decision to go plant-based, then life proceeded. I kept reading and reading and reading and accumulating book after book after book, looking at every single subject, as many different kinds as I possibly could. And my understanding of health just continued to grow, and eventually I got into the natural hygiene of the 1800s and started to reform my diet even more. I started to eliminate other things. I eliminated wheat and noticed health improvements then. I started to recognize the inherent morality in eating and how we live our lives, and how the plant-based lifestyle was actually more in tune with morality, and that became an important thing. The morality of the vegan philosophy, I started to recognize. And, I'll tell you guys a story. It's something that I have told very, very, very few people. A story about myself and what really solidified my recognition of a cruelty-free lifestyle. I had already been a plant-based eater for several years at this point. And as a kid, I had had that fascination with the average type of image of the hero in the jungle, the grizzled man who fends for himself and hunts and catches stuff and honorably takes the lives of animals when he's surviving. You know that image. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. It's something that I'd never had to experience because I always lived with my parents in the city, so there was never any necessity, obviously, to go out and start hunting. But that fantasy was something that I had humored, and I still, even as a vegan, there was this thing that told me I kind of want to experience that hunting thing just once. I had no ambitions to become a hunter, but I did want to experience what it would be like to take something down, to take down an animal. So one day, we had a bit of a raccoon problem at home. I convinced myself that this might be a good opportunity to test my archery skills and take down a raccoon. And my mom hated them. She always complained, "Oh no, the raccoons are back." So anyway, I rationalized to myself that taking down a raccoon might be something that was constructive for me developmentally, and because no one wanted the raccoons living in the attic or whatnot. One evening, I go out, I've got my bow and arrow, there's a raccoon, and I don't want to bore you guys with the details, but anyway, the raccoon's there, and I snuck up on it, and I had my bow and arrow in hand, drew the arrow back, and I released. And I hit the raccoon. And what happened next, I will never, ever, ever forget. The screams of pain and confusion and terror that the raccoon made were so tangible, so human-like, and it rocked me. It penetrated right down to my soul. The poor thing, after it was hit with this arrow, it scurried up a nearby tree, and onto top of a house, and it had the arrow in it. And it just disappeared. This was nighttime, so I didn't know where the thing went. And all I could hear were screams filling the air, filling the neighborhood air in the evening time, of this raccoon just bellowing out in agony and fear and terror. And other raccoons in the area, it's either its family or other raccoons that were just picking up on it. There was just this raucous noise, right? This cacophony of raccoon sound effects that I had caused. And it was, to say that I felt badly or I felt guilty would be an understatement. A ridiculously profound understatement. I felt absolutely horrible and was, just ashamed, so ashamed of myself. It was at that moment that I knew, okay, I will never, ever again in my life hunt when it's not necessary. If there's no necessity to kill, then obviously that's the wrong thing to do. Because if I were actually a carnivore in my psychological constitution and my physical constitution, then these screams of agony would have no such effect. It would just be normal for me. I would just be like, yeah, that's what food does. But no, as human beings, we cannot ignore these natural emotional sensitivities. And this sensitivity, it hit me so hard. Now, here's the interesting thing about that experience. The next day, I went back out to the side of the house where I had hit that raccoon because my arrow was gone. So this raccoon had taken my arrow. So now I'm worried about some arrow just showing up in the neighborhood, right? Along with some dead raccoon, or that wouldn't be good at all. But the raccoon did live. It was alive. And I must have just scared it because, if I had seriously wounded it, it definitely wouldn't have been able to scurry up the tree at 100 kilometers an hour and disappear, right? But anyway, I went back to the area where I had shot the raccoon, and something really amazing happened. Right there, right on that very spot where I had taken the shot. Now I'm talking, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking right there where I was standing that took the shot. The arrow had somehow magically returned, facing down, stuck in the grass, sticking up, just waiting there for me to collect. How it got there, I have no idea. Why it would be there in that position like that, I don't know. How it could have coincidentally been in literally the exact same spot that I was standing when I shot the arrow, that was beyond me. I don't know what circumstances, were responsible for that. But the way it felt, was that some guardian spirit, some guardian angel of mine recognized how terrible I felt and recognized that I was now going to do whatever I could to never do that again, and was hearing my apology and returning my arrow to me and saying, I forgive you. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm saying that that's what it felt like, okay? And I was so thankful and relieved that I got this arrow back. And that just, for me, in my head, again, not saying that that's what happened, but I'm saying in my head, I just convinced myself, I'm like, I'm going to take that as a sign. And, this will never happen again. Anyway, that's a little personal story, a little personal anecdote that I've never really told to you guys before that I thought you might be interested in hearing. Because, for people on my YouTube channel that are subscribers to the Freemelon Society on YouTube, I think it's important for you to know that I'm a human. I make mistakes. I have flaws just like everybody. Anyhow, let's continue with the backstory. Around the time that I did go vegan, plant-based, I also got into fasting. So I started fasting for about 36 hours every single weekend, and without fail. I was rigorously disciplined with this. Every single weekend, without fail, I would fast for a day and a half at least. This continued for several years, plant-based eating. Plant-based, cooked food, but plant-based. When 2016 rolled around, that is when I had accumulated enough that I decided that going into a fruit-based lifestyle was the best thing for me. And after that happened, then lots of things started changing, especially in my physical body, the way I thought about food, my relationship to it. Remember, I'd already been fasting for several years. And now with this new change, things started to happen. I started noticing healing in my body. I lost a crazy amount of weight almost immediately upon going fruitarian. And as my body squeezed out these poisons, I went through little ups and downs here or there, but nothing really that was very upsetting to my lifestyle. I was still able to exercise and do all the things that I normally did. But yes, I noticed weight loss. I noticed other little changes. I noticed over time my allergies. I was allergic to cats and dogs. I noticed those allergies started to go away. I noticed that my skin was healing. I noticed that all the mucus congestion that I had experienced for my whole life, even when I was vegan, mucus congestion started to go away. The amount of time I was spending blowing my nose in tissues was falling off. Months and months go by. You start noticing other things. You stop smelling. You don't need deodorants. Your toilet odors, they go away. My flexibility improved and was maintained even without having to do stretching. My joints just became nice and supple and loose. Fasting started to become easier. So as I started to increase the intensity of my fasts, I noticed that I was able to feel better and better on, short little fasts, 2 days, 3 days here and there. And so on and on it went, noticing gradual health improvements as I progressed further and further into the lifestyle. The YouTube channel that I had for several years that served as portfolio for my film career, it had garnered me a couple of subscribers, just a very, very small following. And I decided that it was time for me to start sharing the information that I'd started to accumulate over all this time. And so I kind of revamped and gave my YouTube channel a facelift, and then kind of dwelt on what I wanted to call the channel. And that took me a while. So I was just thinking about it for several nights. And finally, when I was lying down in bed one evening, it just hit me. I'm like, oh my goodness. The original uncorrupted intention behind the Freemasonic secret society, where the teachers try to instruct the students about themselves, how their bodies work, and how the world around them works. And it just hit me. I'm like, oh my God, Freemelon Society. Holy smokes, that's the one. Anyway, so I revamped my channel and then started putting out content for all of you guys. And ever since I've been doing that, I've felt very, very good about that decision, because really in the end, helping people is just one of the most rewarding things that you can do. So let's go back to the original question that I posed at the beginning of this episode. Why on earth would you want to listen to me? I'm not a medical doctor. I don't have a PhD. Why on earth would you want to listen to me? I think one of the things that makes the things I am discussing on this podcast and on my channel, I think one of the things that makes them valuable is because I don't have any of these allegiances. I don't have the years and years of conditioning associated with med school and the narrow frame of mind that it subjects their students to. I'm just your everyday average guy who happens to be a very, very good student. I found that I was skipping nights out nights out partying, to stay home and just read and plug away at my books and take my notes. I stopped playing video games. I stopped watching TV and started replacing the time that I was spending with those, studying and accumulating more and more and more, and developing a very, very good understanding of how the world worked in all of its spheres. I was plugging in tons of dots on the map, some of those dots not connected at first, and then as I went on, more and more of the connections started to spring to life. The reasons why the world is in the shape and in the state it's in started to make sense to me because I could understand now what was happening. And everything was connected. Everything. Health, politics, spirituality, history, economics, finance, banking, all of it connected in this very interesting way. And so having a generalized, broad understanding, or broad familiarity, I should say, with all of it, with a personal interest in health, wellness, and spirituality and whatnot, put me in a good position to start giving out the information that I'd accumulated over all this time. Ladies and gentlemen, that is just a little bit about me, and I hope that you tune into this podcast if you are on the healthy lifestyle in any capacity. So just as on the Freemelon Society on YouTube, this podcast is going to be focused on similar material. We're going to be covering health, wellness, spirituality, history, corruption, all of that kind of stuff. So we've got a lot of good things coming up for you guys. Thank you very, very much for listening, and I hope you tune into this podcast. And I hope you also tune into the Freemelon Society on YouTube. There's a lot to know out there, guys. Not one person has all of the answers, but as with many things, it's an eclectic approach. Take in what you can from as many different sources, from as many different people as possible. Make up your own mind, do your own research. And the more and more you take in, the better and better your ability to discern good and bad information will improve. That's what I've tried to do to the best of my ability, to hopefully share with you information that's only going to help amplify the quality of your life. Okay? Thank you very much, my beloved Freemelons. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time on the Freemelon podcast. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.